Welcome back as After Hours continues from GM Place in Vancouver, where the Canucks beat the Oilers 4-1 tonight. Pleased to be joined now by Canucks President and General Manager Mike Gillis. Before we get on to the Olympic discussion and the state of your team, how was Christmas?
It was good. It was good. We had family in and took my one day off, and now we're back at it.
Happy with your gifts?
Always. Always.
What was the best one?
The best? No, they were all pretty good. They were all pretty good.
Do you ever really
I don't want to choose one, it'll offend somebody.
Do you ever really truly get away from the game, though, even when you have a couple days, or have you been able to separate that at all?
No. It's impossible to get away from it. And there's something going on every day, and you just, you have to be here. The games are really tightly compressed, as you know, and there's always something to do, even though there aren't any trades happening, but there's always something to do.
So demanding, though, in the Canadian market. I think Kevin Lowe once said it best to me when I asked him if he got a chance to do any skiing with his wife, Karen, who's a former Olympic medalist. He said, "Are you kidding? I can't do any of that stuff. I'm the general manager of a team in a Canadian market. I cannot be seen doing that sort of thing."
It's challenging, and there's a lot of media commitments. There's a lot of moving parts, and it's really difficult to find some free time.
All right, before we talk about the Olympics, I think of greater concern to you, Mike, would be your team simply making the playoffs. And you've been outside the top 8 for most of the season, just in there tonight as a result of the 4-1 win over the Oilers. But what gives you the confidence this is going to change in the second half of the season and that you will be in the postseason?
Well, I think some teams got off to really strong starts, and they didn't really suffer any injury issues like we did. And it seems like everything gets balanced out in this league at some point. So we're hoping some teams will move back a little bit in the pack, and that we'll start to play the kind of game that we think we can play and be consistent. And if those things happen, I think we'll be in good shape.
Mike, you talk about the balancing act. Interesting. Coming into this game, we talked about the fact that you hadn't won or hadn't lost any games in overtime. You only played in 2. You look above you coming into tonight, and Dallas had 11. Do you still feel the same about the point for a loss as a general manager? I know it does even itself out at times, but what's your feeling when you look at 11 points they have above you in the standings because of that losing?
And 5 fewer wins.
Yeah, well, it makes you angry. I mean, we've got, I think, 22 wins now, so we're right there with the top teams in the league, and we're fighting for a playoff spot. So, but those are the rules. They're the same for everybody, and there were games where we felt that our team didn't play as well as it should have, and consequently you lost those games and lost an opportunity at least a point. And we're now starting to see the team we have. We have a lot of confidence in this group, and we think it's a good team. And if we continue to play like we have the last 3 weeks, I think we'll be in good shape.
Here's a question for you from Pat in Ottawa. When you took over as GM, you said you wanted to change the culture surrounding the team. How difficult have you found it, considering the fans' mood changes with every win and loss?
Well, it takes time, and we've done a lot of things behind the scenes that most people don't know about in terms of the environment that we've created here and what we've tried to do. And I think we have a place now where players genuinely want to stay here and play, and they want to come here and play. And that's the kind of cultural shift that I wanted to see, where this is a place where guys really do want to play here and stay here. So we're starting to see that, but it's still early in the process, and hopefully we'll get stronger.
How much do you talk about with your leadership group about the challenges of playing in a hockey-crazed market, and when things go, whether they're going well and maybe the guys get a little ahead of themselves, or if they're not going well and they get too hard on themselves? Do you have a lot of discussions with that, or do you leave that to the players and the coaches?
No, we give them advice. We have some consultants we've hired to deal with media issues and more about how we internalize what's being said and done. And you know what? The media here has been very fair, I think, with me in particular and with our team for the most part. And we don't have many complaints, but there are guys that take things to heart, and you just have to make sure they rationalize it correctly.
Mike, your team faces a gargantuan challenge in the new year with that 40-day, 14-game road trip. That no team should ever complain about a road trip after you guys have to face something like that. But earlier tonight in Hockey Night in Canada, was brought up that Brian Burke is thinking of scrapping game day skates. It's also referred to the fact that some teams have practiced at 4 in the afternoon, and you're on the cutting edge of the sleep deprivation thing that you've hired people to address for your team. So what are you doing out of the ordinary to prepare for this road trip?
Well, we've done detailed analysis about our travel, and Now we're starting to spend more nights in the city that we play in and leave the next day, so we get a skate in the following morning in that city, which is far more like when we play.
Yeah.
And we have a formula that we use that calculates fatigue levels, and when we get to a certain game that's below a certain level, Elaine adjusts our practice schedule around that. And oddly enough, the game that we lost in Carolina, which was a real focal point for this team, that was the lowest level we had all year, and there's nothing we could do about it. Just the way it was 3 games in 3.5 days. So, but we're trying to look at every possible way to get our fatigue levels manageable. And when you play on the West Coast, it's always a concern. But it's coming, and we're still doing work on it. We're still looking at it, and there are still a few more things we want to do, but you can't introduce everything all at once. You have to do in stages.
Last question, Craig, before we go to break.
Well, obviously, on that note, then, the challenge of having potentially a third of your lineup playing all through the Olympics, in your mind, have you sort of addressed how you're going to deal with that once that comes back? You don't know who's maybe going to go right to the finals, but there has to be some concern of fatigue there as well.
Yeah, we've looked at what we're going to do immediately before and immediately after the Olympics in terms of travel for our players that will be in it, and we're taking some steps to get them to the next city in a reasonable time frame. But you're hamstrung by what you have in front of you, and you just have to try and work within it and do the best you can.
All right, Mike Gillis, Canucks President and General Manager, is our guest on After Hours. More with him when we return to GM Place. Welcome back to GM Place in Vancouver as we continue with After Hours. Just 6 days to go until the 2010 Winter Classic from Fenway Park in Boston. Bruins host the Flyers, starts at 1 ET, 10 a.m. Pacific on the full CBC network. They're forecasting snow and temperatures of about 1 degree, so it's conjuring up images of Buffalo and Pittsburgh a couple of years ago, Rich Stadium. Mike, you got, as we mentioned earlier, 8 potential Olympic candidates. Do you anticipate all 8 making their teams?
I do, yeah.
Including Michael Samuelsson?
Yep, I think Michael Samuelsson will make the team. I think he had a really strong start. He's slowed down a little bit, but he's played awfully well for us.
How do you balance? We talked earlier about the fatigue factor, but the experience factor. Is that really important to have as many of your players involved in this?
I think so. I think it's an incredible experience, and I think they're going to thrive, and they're going to play well, and they're going to have an amazing time. So I think it's great.
General Olympic question. I won't ask you to handicap the picks or tell us who you think is going to be on the team, because that would put you in the awkward position of judging other teams' players. But do you anticipate, when the team is named on Wednesday, any major surprises, anybody off the radar?
No, I don't. I think, it's been analyzed over and over again, but I think that it'll be a good mix of younger players and experienced players and guys that have been there and can control their emotions, and I think it'll be great.
Okay, the World Junior Tournament's on, and this leads us to this question. It's from Leon in Pemberton, BC. Do you have any updates on Cody Hodgson, and are his back problems going to be a chronic problem that may affect his playing career? It's taken a lot out of him this year. I don't think is he back playing now?
Not yet, but he should be playing in a couple of weeks, we hope.
Okay, so that's the update. Are you concerned about this being a chronic problem?
No, I'm not concerned at all. I think he suffered a back injury, and everyone's being very conservative with it, and I think that he'll come back and be a really strong player.
What's your thought in terms of developing young players? I know you've had some good success in Manitoba of bringing players along, Mason Raymond, players of that ilk. How important do you think it is not to rush guys too quickly and give them an opportunity to succeed at the other level?
Well, this is a tough league to play in, and now we're seeing young players that start as 18-year-olds that then spend 2 or 3 years trying to get back to the level that they initially had. And it's a really challenging league. You are coached very finely in this league now, and the players are all fast and strong. So it's really hard to separate yourself from the pack. And I think development, you let them overcook for as long as you can, and then get them into this league.
Mike, you did some nice work this offseason in getting the Sedins under contract, and I want to ask you about these lifetime deals that are all the rage now, it seems, around the NHL, those 12, 13-year deals that are front-loaded. They've come in for a lot of discussion, and Roberto Luongo has one. How do you explain the propriety of paying a player a nominal fee 10, 11 years down the road when there's a good chance he will not be playing for your team?
Well, with Roberto, we don't feel that way. Obviously, with a goaltender, we approach it a little bit differently. We feel that he can always morph into a backup role if he chose to, and we're very confident. We know this guy's lifestyle. We know him quite well, and we're very confident that he's going to play as long as he wants to play. And for us, it was an opportunity to sew up a position that is vital to your success, and we chose to do it.
How much here we go? It's a little hot.
It wasn't that question that made you sweat, was it, Mike?
No. It's those lights and you guys.
On that note, with a player like Roberto, I mean, how important is it when you have a player that's unique like that, the most important position, to allow him to have the confidence of knowing he's wanted and going to be around? And you talked about laying yourself out in here and saying we have a good environment. Is that a big part of that as well?
He really wanted to stay here, and he was prepared to commit to our team. He's our franchise player. He's the face and captain of our team, and you've got to do what it takes to try and get those guys signed up for as long as you can, and that's what we did. And we're really pleased because that was a statement to people. We feel he's the best goalie in the league, and it was a statement that he wanted to stay here and finish his career.
And just so we're clear, you're making the point that you are convinced that at the end of this deal, he could be here as a backup goaltender at the age of 42.
Absolutely, maybe the starter.
It's possible. All right, on the topic of signing players, here's a question from Trevor and Powell River. Where is re-signing Ryan Kesler on your list of priorities, and do you see him being re-signed before he makes it to restricted free agency on July the 1st?
We're confident that Ryan will be re-signed. It's very high on our priority list.
Well, we showed at great lengths today the shot blocking that your team has been able to do, and I think one of the earlier questions was about the culture. Is that really a part of the culture of making a good team and a good dressing room when guys do things like that for each other?
Well, you know it does. And when Ryan Johnson is blocking shots in practice, I mean, you can't go out there in a game and not block a shot. So all those little things add up to being a team, and we're feeling like we're going in the right direction. This season was a slow start for us, but really feel that guys are starting to come together and play for one another in a meaningful way, and that's what you have to have in this league to be successful. Anybody who's going to stand in front of Sheldon Surrey's shot like
Michael
that.
Samuelson blocked the shot and then drew a penalty after too.
Yeah, it's good.
So when you see that sort of thing, you can see why re-signing Ryan Kesler is a priority. Mike, I want to thank you for your time.
Yes,
thank you.
All right.
I appreciate it.
Mike Gillis, President and General Manager of the Vancouver Canucks, our guest on After Hours.